Hey folks, Fernando doing our video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this video I'd like to address a question I'm getting quite often, especially through my Instagram, which by the way is Firearm308 if you want to follow me there. And it goes something like this: Hey Fernando, I'm worried about everything going on. I want to get a gun so as to protect myself, protect my family. I'm not a gun guy. I'm just a guy or a woman with a kid, or I live with my mom or whatever. I'm not a gun person. I just want to have something so as to defend myself and my family. And usually that's where everyone has his or her own little opinion. It's going to be, if you ask Joe Biden, it's going to be get yourself a shotgun, a double-barrel shotgun, and it's going to be pointing like that with the fingers. There's nothing wrong with a double-barrel shotgun. I think you have better alternatives. Usually when it comes to shotguns, I would recommend a semi-automatic one, but in most of these cases, it's people that have opinions based on nothing other than their own just imagination. And it's not that they've been doing quite a bit of research. At least in my case, I've been shooting since I'm 15 years old. When I first took my serious defensive shooting course, 15 years of age, decades went by. I've been shooting since then. Today, I shoot mostly competition with my Glock 17, IPSC. And that's where my opinion comes from. Besides that, I've been doing tons of research over the years, especially for my books. These two that you see here, I've researched quite a bit of all of this so as to write them and so as to have the opinion I'm sharing with you guys right now. So what's my advice for that person that is not a gun guy? That's not someone who's going to be training a whole lot, someone that just wants a basic gun so as to defend themselves. Get a revolver. That's my advice. Get yourself a nice 357 Magnum, K-frame or similar. Bigger is just as well fine. 4-inch barrel. If you want to go 5 or 6, that's okay as well. But get yourself a 357 Magnum revolver. It's going to be something that is simple. It's going to be something that works. And if something bad happens, you will have a gun so as to defend yourself and your family. And here's where everyone starts complaining about, no, you should get an AR-15, you should get a Mossberg 500, this, that, or no, get yourself a Glock. This is where it's at because you have 17 rounds plus 1. Look, if you are issued this gun, you're a cop, you get issued a Glock or some other semi-automatic pistol, and you're getting the training for that, that's fantastic. If you're in the military and the same thing, fantastic as well. If you are a prepper, survivalist, or just a gun guy and you're shooting competition and you're shooting 10 or 100 times more trigger time and round counts than most police officers, that's going to be fine as well. If you're taking classes on shooting this, I know, and practices, yes, of course, get yourself a 9mm pistols, or specifically get yourself a Glock, which is the way to go. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the average, by far the most common gun owner, which is someone that has no serious professional defensive shooting training at all whatsoever, never took a single class. That is 90% or more of gun owners. Guys, that's simply how it is. And he's not going to be practicing and training nearly as much as to be proficient with this when it counts, when there's a high stress situation and those fine motor skills are compromised. And that person never even practiced or trained clearing malfunctions and that sort of thing. It is simply the way it is going to be going. That person will not be capable of solving those malfunctions in the same way that someone that trains would. Okay, if I ask you if you know how to drive a car, you're going to be saying, yes, of course, I've been driving for 20, 30 years, driving every day. Sure, are you a professional driver? Because those are two different things. You may know how to drive, move the car from here to there safely, but that doesn't mean you're a professional driver. The professional shooter, whatever that is, law enforcement, military, or someone that is a competitive shooter, or someone that's very much involved in firearms training, go with your Glock pistol or semi-automatic. Someone that just wants a fire extinguisher, right? You're not going to be a fireman. You just want a fire extinguisher in case you can pick it up and stops a fire from burning down your house, right? That is the revolver. That is the revolver. That's where this is at. When that person is confronted by an attacker, scared, shaking, as long as there's rounds inside, it's really not that complicated. You open the gun, put rounds in it, close it, and that scared person will likely instinctively pull the trigger, jerk the trigger, but it's going to be a lot, when these things happen and you read the reports, they don't even remember pulling the trigger, they don't remember the sound of the gunfire, or sometimes they do, sometimes they remember a loud bang. Some people report having an unusually high state of awareness, or some people just barely remember the entire incident because it just flashed in front of their eyes, and they don't remember anything at all. You know that one thing they won't remember is carefully having to pull the trigger until it breaks the action and fires. That's the kind of thing you do when you're shooting calmly in your club, in the firing range, not when you're shooting for saving your life. Those are completely different things. So, some of the common myths is this is more rugged, more reliable. No, this is far more rugged, and I'd say even far more reliable. If you're dragging behind enemy lines along the mud, this is a lot more likely to fail. But that's not the case. It's going to be sitting in a drawer for years or a safe, and one day it may end up being needed so as to save someone's life. Right? Scattering dust, just sitting there, not in the middle of a battlefield, just sitting in a drawer somewhere in the house. Pick it up, pull the trigger, that's it. Now you may be thinking, oh yeah, but without the proper firearms training, no, I'm not talking about not getting any firearms training. I'm talking about getting at least a class with a responsible, serious instructor that will explain to you how to load this gun, most of all, how to handle it safely so as to not shoot someone you're not supposed to shoot, which is by far the most common accident with household guns, right? So that is essential. Get at least one class. But there's a difference between getting one class and training several times a month or once a week or a couple times a year even with this kind of gun. You know what happens? People forget about manual safeties. That happens a lot more than you would even think, even among cops. It happens a lot. I've read so many instances in which that happened. Many times people forget about the empty chamber. They have, the Glock does not have any external manual safeties, which is great, but people forget the empty chamber, and they have an empty chamber because they haven't gotten the training so as to trust themselves with a round in the chamber. So it's all the same circle. That's the kind of thing that happens for people that are not trained. Now, it may well be the case that you have almost no training whatsoever. You picked up your Glock, you remember to put a round in the chamber, and you use that gun successfully for self-defense. Perfect. I'm super glad about that. But it's not the gun that is more adequate for that level of training, because just like that, there's that case, there's several others of instances in which having the gun that they were not supposed to have or was not adequate for their level of training ended up not going their way and go their way around, and people ended up getting killed. This is better for that kind of person. Scared, picking it up, pulling the trigger towards a threat that is likely to work. And here's where many people will say, oh, it's just 6 rounds, that sucks. Well, yeah, but 6 rounds, first of all, 6 rounds of .357 Magnum, if you haven't loaded with these puppies pack a lot more punch than 9mm. You have statistics about that not being that significant. At the end of the day, .357 Magnum is quite a bit more powerful than 9mm. And sure, accurate shot placement is where it's at, but somewhat in the center of mass, somewhat in the chest, this is simply more likely to stop that threat than 9mm. And besides, statistically speaking, 3 rounds is usually all it takes, especially when it comes to home defense, where just one round being fired makes pretty much 99% of those home invaders take off. If they were expecting to get shot at, they wouldn't be breaking in. That is simply something they're not expecting. That's why in absolutely most cases, as soon as they hear one round being fired, they just take off. You may have heard of people that empty the gun. They empty the revolver. Oh, they barely survived because they had an empty gun. Yes, but understand what went on there. Usually, someone that's not well trained will fire the gun dry, no matter if it's a revolver, no matter if it's a 9mm. If it had been this kind of gun for that same person, they would have shot it dry nonetheless. And you'd think, oh, he barely made it because he went through 17 rounds. It didn't matter if it was 1 round, 5, or 17. Those rounds were not being fired in an actual gunfight, in an exchange of fire. It was just an experienced shooter scared shooting the gun dry. So at the least, what you could do is try to control yourself, fire a round, and not go through the entire gun shooting it at nothing, right? That would be the advice, or if we expect to have cool heads, that's what we would try to do. You will not find many instances in which those criminals turn around and start taking fire and returning it. Is simply not all that likely to happen. And even if it happens, you have 6 rounds of .357 Magnum. These are no joke. And the person getting shot with one of these is unlikely to continue the attack, especially specific, proper premium jacket hollow point ammunition, which is what you should be keeping there, rather than this is more intended like hunting or target shooting stuff. that's a lot more likely to be effective. And it's, you know, a K-frame gun, 4-inch, 6-inch, Smith & Wesson, some other good brand. That is the kind of gun you want to go for. And remember that none of this works at all if you don't have the knowledge. That's why I insist always on my books. Of course, I wrote them, I promote them, but really, you're a lot less likely to end up having to use this if you have this in your head. Especially this book, my first book, the Modern Survival Manual. I also recommend it a lot for that kind of situation. Street survival skills is a lot about this. It's a lot about this, about fighting and defending yourself and awareness and home defense, the kind of stuff people are worried about these days. So the links for the books are going to be there along with my Instagram if you want to ask me any questions. Subscribe to the channel. Remember, today 3 p.m. Eastern Time with Matt Bracken. See you guys then. Have an awesome day.